Hello there and welcome back. You are looking at page 34 of your work text, and of course this is just a cover page. We are moving into basic percent concepts, which should help you if you have never studied percent. If you already have a way of doing percent, you can even skip over this module. If you have a way that's working, I do not want you to change that. But the first thing that we need to look at is on page 35. And this is where we have to learn how to move between fraction, percent, and decimal. So I want you to know, first of all, that for every percent, there is a fraction and a decimal that is equal to that percent. So there's a fraction that's equal, there's a decimal that's equal. For every decimal, there are fractions and percents that equal the decimal. So that's the first thing that you want to fix in your mind, that there are equivalent forms, and sometimes we want to use the percent, sometimes the fraction, and sometimes the decimal to do what we need to do in math. But you need to know that there are equal versions of these in all three forms. So let's start with a percent. Percent literally means for every 100. So a percent is a ratio. Let me shrink this down just a hair. That I can't even read that. It is a ratio of a number to 100. Okay, and to illustrate that, I want you to move to this first box. This is a 100 block in the base 10 blocks. And I want you to color in 5. I'm going to use orange, but you can use any color that you have. And I think instead of using that, I'm going to use my highlighter so you can still see the little blocks. So bear with me just a minute. I'm having to get the pencil just the right size so it will fill in the spaces. So there are 5 out of 100. And so that percent of 5 out of 100 is written as 5%. So there I'm showing you a fraction and a percent that are identical. It's just that sometimes I want a fraction. If I'm cooking something, I don't want a percent. I want to know a fraction because my measuring cup is in fractions. But if I'm calculating interest on a purchase or sales tax, then percent is going to be the likely option. So we just have to be able to go back and forth. I used to teach math to nurses, and this is one of the most important skills they had to have, was being able to go back and forth between all these forms. Because if you're dealing with medicine doses or solutions of medicine, you have to be able to do these conversions, they're called, in your mind. So the important thing here is that 5 over 100 equals 5%. They're the same thing. And I'll show you the decimal in just a minute. On this one, I want you to shade 20 of your boxes. So I'm going to do 2 columns of 10. That will give me the 20. So there is 20%. And let me try that again. That is not very straight. You guys know by now that I live on caffeine, so that makes a difference. So this is 20 parts of 100, or 20%. Percent literally means a ratio of some number to 100. And in this last one, I want you to do 3 columns of 4. So we're doing 12 total. 3 times 4, that's 12 parts out of 100, or 12%. So let's go back and get the definition of a fraction. A fraction is a part of a whole. And if you're dealing with percents, the whole is 100. You notice that all of those blocks have 100 little blocks. So if you're dealing with percent, it is a whole of 100. But if you're not dealing with percent, or you're dealing with complicated percents, you can have other bottom numbers. And a decimal is a way of showing parts of a whole using fractions of 10. And I'm going to show you how to calculate the decimals here. This one goes with this math rule. To change a fraction to a decimal, divide the bottom number into the top number. So let's focus just a minute right here on this problem right there. I want to change this to a decimal. Now there are other ways you can do it. You can move the percent sign. That's fine, but I want to show you the long division. So if you have to divide to get a decimal, here's what you do. You take the bottom number of your fraction and you're dividing that into the top. So I'm saying 5 divided by 100. Now can 100 go into 5? No. So I add a decimal and I add a 0. Can 100 go into 50? No. So 0 times 100 is 0. Actually, let me not complicate it. Let's just keep adding zeros because we can do that. Will 100 go into 500? Yes, it will go 5 times, and 5 times 100 is 500. And of course, you can do this on your calculator, but I needed to show you just a reminder of long division, and also sometimes I just want you to see the old-fashioned way. I think that's important, that you understand where this stuff is coming from. But there's your decimal. So in this family of fraction, decimal, and percent, we could say that 0.05 is that third sibling. Brothers and sisters here. There are always 3 of them. There's a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. So we need to be able, as high school graduates, to find those numbers. Okay, let's tackle this one. 20 hundredths, which we already know is 20%. So let's find their third brother. Let's find their decimal that goes with them. So you would say 100 divided into 20. And same process. We have to go through the long division. Can 100 go into 20? No. So let's add a 0. Can 100 go into 200? Yes, it goes 2 times. So 2 times 100 is 200. And that is finished. When you have no remainder, you can use those 2 lines to say that that decimal is terminated. It's a terminal decimal. It doesn't go on forever. So their decimal brother or sister is 0.2. And you can certainly add a 0 there if you want to. That's legal. Or you can leave it off. Your calculator will leave it off. But you could add as many zeros out through there as you wanted to, and you're not changing the value at all. So those zeros are extraneous zeros. Okay, one more. We have this guy, and we know that 12 hundredths equals 12%, but we need to know the third piece of this, which is going to be the decimal. So because we're dealing with parts out of 100, we're going to divide 100 into 12. So you ask yourself, will 100 go into 12? And it will not. So let's put a 0, and at the point you add a 0, you add a decimal. 100 into 120 goes one time, and 1 times 100 is 100. So you subtract, and then I'm going to change color here just to show you the steps. I'm going to add one more 0 and bring it down. And then 100 into 200 is 2 times. 2 times 100 is 200. And you subtract and you get a terminating decimal. It does not go on forever. So the decimal equivalent here is 0.12 or 12%. So that is what this means when it says right there, math rule, to change a fraction to a decimal, divide the bottom number into the top number. And that's what we've done. Okay. Here's another math rule. To change a decimal to a percent, move the decimal 2 places to the right. So let's take the decimal 0.05. And I want to turn that into a percent. So here's what I need to do. I need to take my decimal and move it 2 places to the right. So I went 1 place, 2 places, 2 scoops to the right. So this is 5%. If you have 0.2, you take your, let me move this down a hair. You take your decimal and you move it 1, 2, and it has to be 2. So we have to add a 0 right there because we have to move it 2. And once you add the 0, you end up with 20%. And then our 12, we had 0.12. So we would move it 1, 2 places to the right. 1, 2. And so 0.12 is equal to 12%. And you are going to need to be able to do this, especially when we do interest problems. So this one is an important skill that you will see again. I did not do an assignment for this particular lesson because I needed this space to complete this table. So I'm going to stop our video and I'll come back with you and we will fill in this table together. Now, if you want to try it on your own, you can certainly do that and check your answers. But if you're not sure, just meet me back in the next video and I'll help you fill it in.